Well, now, on to something different. Before dating apps and swiping left or right, finding love often meant relying on introductions, luck, or perhaps even a matchmaker. In the 1980s, Heber Percy set up one of the UK's first professional dating agencies, offering a more personal and more discreet route to romance and to find that perfect match. She wrote, telling us all about her work, and joins me this morning in the Woman's Hour studio. Good morning.
Hello.
Great to have you in with us. What made you want to set up a dating agency?
Well, it was really strange because I'd arrived back in this country after living in Ibiza for very many years. My parents went to live there. And I came back with 2 small children, very little money, and I felt guilty about the divorce that I'd gone through. So I wanted to put something back into society. I went to the Samaritans. I went through the back door rather than the front door, but I became so involved in it that it really gave me quite a huge lift. And although I didn't have a job at that time, I spent quite a lot of time working on the phones and meeting people, as we did in those days. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I made a lot of friends through the Samaritans, and one friend I made was called Susie McIntosh. Sadly, she died of cancer, but she and I would work on the phones together. And at the end of the day, naughtily, we'd go off and have a drink and sort of, have a chat and sort of calm down and then go our separate ways. And she did become a close friend as well. And one evening we were sitting there in the pub in Shrewsbury, which was where the centre was, and she said to me, "I've had a lot of farmers this evening on the phone." And I said, "Well, I've had 3. And she said, "Well, what do you think's going on?" And I said, "Well, I do know that a lot of the women who would have become farmers' wives were moving away from home and they wanted to go to university and they didn't want to become farmers' wives." So she said something to me. It was a throwaway remark. It was quite funny, really. She said, "I know what we're going to do." Because she was in the same position as me. She had kids. She needed to make some money. She said, "We're going to start a club for lonely farmers." And I said,
Lonely Farmers Club?
Lonely Farmers Club. And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, let's get them out there dating." And I said, "Well, how the hell do we do that?" Anyway, to cut a long story short, we started it and we knew nothing about it. We had this old typewriter. You've got to remember, no computers in those days, nothing. And we had this funny little photocopier that every time you did a photocopy, it almost spat back at you. It didn't like working for us, but we had a photocopier. And so we created a little brochure and we put an advertisement in Farmers Weekly.
Very good idea.
Yeah.
And when they came, as they did, how did you know, or how do you know, because I imagine it's a skill that you don't lose, that 2 people would work together?
I don't think I did. I have to be really honest now. I don't think I knew. If someone said to me today, "Can you work people out? Do you know how to interview people? Can you get the idea of that person?" I would say to you now, with absolute clarity, within 10 minutes, I can work someone out.
Oh.
But that sounds really arrogant. I don't mean it to be.
But if you've had a lot of people, you've sat opposite a lot of people have gone through your hands,
yes,
so to speak, and so you get a feeling for somebody and you can figure it out.
Yes.
But I need to know, were there any great success stories?
Yes, there were. But the sad thing about the dating industry, and we are talking about the traditional dating industry here, the people who come to us are people who don't want anyone else to know what's happened.
Oh, so the stigma.
So they will go away, they'll get married, and you never hear from them again.
Oh, I understand. Okay. So the way they met was at that time, we're talking about the 1980s, was stigmatised.
Absolutely. We even had to have a back door in the farmhouse for them.
An actual back door?
An actual back door. So they didn't sort of, arrive at the front of the farmhouse. They would go around the back way.
But you must know of some that got together. Yes.
Oh, yes, I do. And one of the lovely weddings I went to, it was a woman in Bedfordshire, and she was difficult. I mean, this is many, many years ago, and I happen to know that she's no longer, with us, sadly. And she was really frustrated with us because if people don't meet people the moment you take them on, they can get angry and upset. But you've got to realise it's loneliness, that makes them that way. So that's the negative side of being a traditional matchmaker. You get everything thrown at you. Anyway, to get back to the story, so we were having difficulties with her, and she said, I don't want to travel very far. And I said, well, I've just interviewed this man who lives in North Wales, and she nearly went berserk. She said, I'm not going to North Wales to meet this man. And I said, look, please. And I said, on the way back, just come and have a cup of coffee with us and we'll talk things over if it doesn't work out. So she said, well, this is the last introduction I'm going to do with you. So off she toddled. She went to North Wales. And Geraldine, my admin manager, and I were sort of sitting there waiting with bated breath. And remember, there were only ordinary phones in those days, no mobile phones, nothing. And we waited and we waited. And she said, I'm really worried about this. And I said, I am too. Perhaps she's going to turn up any moment now at the offices and want her money back. So she said, well, I think maybe we'll phone him and find out. He was a charming man. He used to run a little railway, a proper little Victorian railway down there. And he was just lovely. And I couldn't have imagined that she wouldn't like him anyway. So we phoned him and he said, hello. And I said, I'm just checking up to know how your date went. He said, well, he said it went okay. And I said, well, are you seeing her again? He said, well, yes and no. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, she never went home.
So it was successful.
Very successful. And then we were invited to the wedding.
Oh, my goodness. So
Yes.
from that very first introduction.
Yes.
How lovely. I mean, it must be a wonderful way in lots of ways when it works out.
I know.
To have that job. And you're still working in it.
I am still working it. I sold my dating agencies, but they're still alive today. I'll tell you just one other quite funny but sad story. Has to be very quick, I know, but maybe I have to go off air now. I don't know.
Why? We'll have to talk about dating because I do need to get onto another story of dreams, but I will continue to think about this matchmaking and perhaps we can chat to you another time as well, Heather. But I want to thank you so much for coming in. Heather Heber Percy, who set up one of the UK's first professional dating agencies and has lots of stories to tell. Thank you very much for sharing some of them with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.